So here we are, the beautiful Snoqualmie River, the lifeblood of the valley. It's beautiful and it's also destructive. Living in Snoqualmie Valley requires some knowledge about flood insurance, and I'm taking you today to the best local expert I know to talk to you about flood insurance, and that's Angela Donaldson. Let's go.
Yeah, so if you see that little bush over there that is next to nothing right now, that's your bush? I call that my flood bush. Yeah. And when the roots of the bush are covered, we're in stage 1. Yeah. And when the bush is covered, we're at about stage 3. And when it reaches over that revetment, we're at stage 4. And it just continues to flow north. I'm a third-generation insurance agent. I started as a licensed agent back in '04, and I've been with our family agency since then, and we've built the agency to be one of the top farmers agencies in the state. It was the relationships that made me want to be an insurance agent. It was never a sales role, it was about taking care of people. So there are roughly 14,000 certified floodplain managers in the country. Most of them are planners. There are 10 insurance agents that have been able to also be a certified floodplain manager, and I'm one of those 10. So a floodplain manager is someone that understands the regulations that apply to reducing the risk of life and saving of property in the floodplain. So when a homeowner is buying a piece of property near waterfront, they may be concerned about buying a home in the floodplain, although it's important to know that flood risk is everywhere, not just in the special flood hazard area. Regardless of where your property is located, you're still 30 times more likely to have flooding than you are a fire, and everyone buys homeowners insurance. So it's really about understanding your risk. I love talking to people about flood insurance. So when they're looking at what it's going to cost to insure their home and protect it for flooding risk, the first thing I do is a natural hazard assessment. And I explain what the real risk means. And then I teach them how to buy flood insurance. So we look at both the federal program as well as the private markets. And if there's any measures they can take to mitigate the risk, which can be as simple as adding a few crawl space vents to potentially putting the property on the list for home elevations. And then we look at coverages, deductibles, and markets. Homeowners have misconceptions on flood insurance that it's expensive. Those that have lived in the valley for a long time and have had their homes flooded, you'll typically hear that they are paid very fairly and they've been able to improve their homes every time it's flooded. The Snoqualmie River is the lifeblood for the Snoqualmie Valley. It's how it was created geologically and culturally. The upper valley has a lot of tributaries in the headwaters of the Snoqualmie Watershed, and it brings a lot of high flow and sediment with it, and that creates an interesting dynamic in the upper valley, which is why most of the repetitive property damage is in the upper valley. Once it hits the lower valley below Snoqualmie Falls, it disperses, and the valley walls truly create the border of the floodway. And because of that dispersion, the surface elevation does not increase as significantly over time with climate change because it's so broad. However, it does create a lot of issues for farmers. But without those floods, we wouldn't have such an amazing agricultural production district because it creates such fertile land. So we really do have to live in harmony with the river. The way that a watershed works in the fall, when it's had a long, dry season during the summer, the ground becomes unable to absorb water as efficiently as it would in, say, the spring. So when the first flooding happens in the fall, You get all of the road oils washing off, and it acts more like a flash flood. The water doesn't absorb through the different flood storage areas like the oxbows and the sloughs, and it will tend to have higher surface water elevations. Once we've gotten through that initial flood season, we're able, in the fall, we're able to see better ground absorption in the watershed, and it acts like a sponge. And so the water will be able to drain more efficiently and be better off for us in the spring. So the most common spring floods are, if it's quiet in the fall, it'll be worse in the spring. If it's worse in the fall, it'll be more quiet in the spring. We say in like a lamb, out like a lion. And so in the spring, when we have high snow melt and a warm weather event with large precipitation, we have catastrophic flooding because we just don't have enough drainage areas in the watershed for it to go. And that's where we see the most significant damage. When I have flooding alerts go off, the first thing I do is look at the areas that need to be evacuated. I immediately go out and take action. I take photos, I look at the evacuation routes, I look at the hydro gauges, I check on the farmers and see when those evacuation routes will be covered with water, and take photos so that our hydrologists can see where the high water marks are. I love flood insurance discussions with property owners in our communities because it educates them and it makes our community more resilient. The more they understand the risk, they're making better decisions for their families and their businesses. We're able to recover better after natural hazards, and they know how to purchase their flood insurance in a more efficient way that not only saves them more money, but also allows us to recover in a much more sustainable and resilient way in the future.
So there you have it. Hopefully you learned a lot about flood insurance and the Snoqualmie Valley. If you have questions, I'm going to link to all of Angela's contact info in this video. You're going to give her a call, you're going to shoot her an email, and you're going to learn a ton, and she's going to be able to help you out. So I really appreciate you watching this video. This is just another great example of why the Snoqualmie Valley is unique and one of a kind, and that's why there's only one Snoqualmie Valley Real Estate. I'm Brian Davis. Be well.